What? You're the one talking shit. You're too old to be doing that. You're too old to be doing all that.
Then
back the fuck up.
Stop. You gonna do something about it? You gonna do something about it?
Messing with the wrong guy on the street can land you a one-way ticket to the hospital. For every wannabe tough guy roaming around these streets, gyms, and boxing rings, there's an actual legit tough guy waiting to take them out. From the petty scraps behind closed doors to the fighters who made the mistake of taunting the wrong guy. Here's when idiots find themselves in fighting situations they never saw coming. Not everyone's ego is ready to give up so easily, and for this dude, his total rejection of all things BJJ made him the perfect target for this skilled grappler. Simply put, this guy didn't think that jiu-jitsu was all it was cracked up to be, and challenged an actual grappler to a roll just to prove his point. The problem? Well, he had no ability to grapple, leaving him open to pretty much every submission in the book, and his opponent made sure to tap him multiple times for his troubles. But this guy would not be so easily convinced, and he kept telling his opponent that he was getting lucky. So this BJJ fighter just kept on tapping him until he eventually made him accept the error of his ways. But who knows if he ended up having any effect on his huge ego from there onwards.
Again. Yeah, you got lucky. Oh, you got lucky.
Just because you can throw a solid hard punch doesn't mean you know how to fight, and for this guy, you could just tell how uncomfortable he was getting punched in the face. Add in the fact that his wild swinging shots were missing by a huge margin each and every time, and you're left with a recipe for a truly one-sided beatdown. He kept swinging big, and he repeatedly missed even bigger. And the way he kept falling off balance every time he did so, yeah, any competent boxer was always going to tune him up. This one really illustrates the difference between knowing how to fight and knowing how to throw punches like a madman. Being big ain't all it's cracked up to be if you don't have the technical skills to back it all up. And in this case, this giant guy was left at the mercy of a much better fighter in this battle. He seemed pretty confident, diving into every exchange with massive looping punches that were designed to KO in one successful land. The issue was that he wasn't able to break through his opponent's defense at all. Plus, to make matters worse, every time his rival tried to land, his weapons were way more diverse, leaving him with little more than a punching bag to tee off on. Eventually, like all big dudes, this guy began to tire himself out too. And when he did, this bout was basically over.
Can you tell him to calm the fuck down?
Yet another piece of gym justice comes in next, in the form of a big scary tough guy who thinks he can stroll into a mixed martial arts gym, mean mug everyone, and take on the best fighters in there and get his hand raised. Well, he certainly managed the first two parts, but when the time came to test his boxing against one of the fighters, his whole game fell apart in an instant. Not touching gloves at the start is just bad sportsmanship, but thankfully, he was made to pay in a big way. His shots were incredibly readable, and the trained fighter had no problem finding his chin time and time again. Eventually, a clean right hand was enough to send him crashing to the canvas, and a second one on the way down put his lights out once and for all.
He said he wanted some to Jeremy.
The whole drunken master style of fighting is pretty effective when you're fighting someone who doesn't know what they're doing. But for as much as it was fun to watch this dude flailing around like a weirdo for a while, his opponent was the kickboxing and MMA icon Melvin Manhoef. And if you know anything about this absolutely lethal striker and his tendency to get a fast finish, then you'll know that fighting like this against him is a bad idea. Once he figured out his opponent's weird timing, the kill shot didn't take long to land. And boy, was it a violent one.
He did it all! He did it again! Big right hand. Well,
grappling is the type of fighting art form that you really can't get too many fluky wins in. Lucky punches don't really exist in the world of BJJ. And so, if you find yourself on the mats with a black belt and you don't know what you're doing, expect to end up like this guy. Sometimes the first tap isn't enough to make your point, but for this guy, he ended up learning his lesson quickly. But to his credit, he dove back in for some more a further 2 times.
I got respect for you.
Hey, they appreciate you.
Eager to learn more about his limitations as a fighter. Sure, he came in confident, but it's nice to see someone accept getting humbled like this so well.
My man. My man.
Some guys just don't understand what it's like to get punched in the face. They're used to bedazzling people with their odd movement and leaving them too confused to attack efficiently. But when these fakers come up against someone who actually knows how to fight, you end up with a situation like this one. These 2 guys should not have been in the same ring together. One was a trained MMA fighter and the other, well, let's just say the other, was not. The MMA fighter found it so easy to dissect this dude at every turn, to the point where he looked genuinely amused by the whole thing. In the end, he nearly sent him flying out of the ring, a fitting punishment for this tryhard. Another Tai Chi fighter learns a lesson next, and this time it's against a Muay Thai fighter who's not interested in dragging this fight out any longer than he needs to. Just look at the Tai Chi guy's posture, his movement, and most of all his choice of offensive weapons. It was all terrible on the surface, and even worse in practice. His wild jumping kicks left him totally open to counters. It wasn't very hard for the kickboxer to gauge his timing and eventually put some real damage on him. Easy work, as easy as we'll ever feature on this channel. This fight between the kickboxing icon Musashi and Yongsoo Park was marred by early repeated low blows, to the point where it became clear that they were intentional. But cheating like that at your opponent's expense is truly the mark of a guy who's not a real fighter. Thankfully, Musashi was able to recover, step on the gas, and really start to put a beating on his opponent. Eventually, he landed a head kick that dazed Park, before following up with a huge left hook and another right that put his opponent down once and for all. In that moment, though, his emotions ran red hot, and he ended up stamping on his unconscious opponent, which is not advisable. But hey, Park played his hand and got what he deserved in the end. Although maybe the 2-punch finish ought to have been enough for Musashi. This little dude seemed to think that he could walk right on up to an MMA coach who was way bigger than him and claim that he would beat him soundly in a fight. Why he thought this? Not exactly sure. But that's not how you sign up to a martial arts gym, and the coach seemed to take the whole thing quite personally and went out of his way to teach this loser an absolutely vital lesson, not only about fighting, but about how to treat your fellow man. And boy, did he make his point quick.
I was talking to you in the car and you were disrespectful, and I told you come to classes, come to fucking classes.
This dude had no idea how to fight, no idea how to strike, how to take a shot, how to wrestle, and he was promptly kicked out shortly after. Up next, we have yet another example of a bar in Thailand that will let any tourist fight a trained Muay Thai athlete in exchange for free food and beer. But in this case, this oversized behemoth of a man was not very gracious about the offer. In fact, he burst into the bar and very drunkenly promised he could beat up any Thai fighter with absolutely no issues. Yeah, you can already see how this one is playing out. This guy is just an out-of-shape wannabe who's probably used to having it all his own way on the streets, probably fighting in wild bar scraps that are over in a matter of seconds. He probably intimidates his way out of most real fights on the back of his size alone. But when he started eating those hard body kicks, it wasn't long until he was ready to quit on himself. A total embarrassment. Football players might be incredible athletes in their own way, capable of dishing out tremendous punishment in their own sport. But if they make the mistake of thinking they actually know how to tangle with a real fighter, that's where things can get messy. Because for as much as a high-level football player would probably destroy most untrained randomers, if they find themselves going head-to-head with a grappler, their athleticism is pretty much useless. And in this case, you could see this football player start to understand just how out of his depth he was. And when the BJJ fighter managed to get his back, that was pretty much the end of this bout. One-way traffic in every sense of the phrase. Who knows? Maybe this guy took it as a sign that he should actually learn how to fight.
I can get in there and knock him out the first round. Is he the best guy I fought? No. I'm a monster in there.
Look, we like Anthony Dirrell here on this channel, but if you're going to try and trash talk a trained killer like David Benavidez, you're just asking for a totally one-sided beatdown. And that's what we saw here. Dirrell was pretty composed and confident on the mic, but apart from maybe winning the first round, he was made to suffer round after round of vicious punishment from Benavidez. And with a guy like that unloading his infamous combos on you, it's only going to be a matter of time before you understand who the one true elite in the ring is. And if Dirrell didn't realize that, well, his corner certainly did. And once they understood that this was a hopeless task, they quickly threw in the towel, saving their guy from more punishment, plus the inevitable knockout that would clearly follow.